Hey everybody, welcome to the videos from my core plays for week 11 of the NFL season over on Draftkings, my straight up favorite plays on this slate. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and I really do appreciate it. And while you're at it, you might as well hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. And YouTube tells me that around 50% of the people watching these videos have not yet subscribed. So if you're a frequent visitor of the channel or if you're new and you like what you see, consider that subscribe button because it really does help the channel grow. That's obviously going to help me out as well. So without further ado, let's get into this week's core plays video. Alright, so leading us off with core play number 1, it's no other than Dalvin Cook at $9,000. There should be no surprise here. I've been talking about Dalvin Cook all week, and I'm sure everyone else is as well. The running back position is just not that great on this slate, so it just makes him more of a priority than he is already. And I'm going to make it an absolute emphasis to get him in my lineups. He's going to be the first guy that I plug in. This is just a fantastic spot versus Dallas. They're pretty awful defensively, and Dalvin Cook is one of the best running backs in football, and there's many other factors going in his way as well. I really don't have one bad thing to say about Dalvin Cook. He pretty much checks each and every single box for me this week. He's a 7-point favorite at home, which always sets up well for the home running back. He gets volume each and every single week. He's had huge games this season. I know last week versus the Bears only had 15 points, and it's pretty good when you have a bad game, and it's still 15 points. That's not a bad floor, but he had 40-some points versus Detroit, 50-some points versus Green Bay. Not saying he's going to do that exactly this time around, but it's still another really good matchup versus Dallas. They're 28th DVA versus the run, and they're allowing nearly 130 rushing yards per game. So I think Dalvin Cook's in store for another big game here. Would not surprise me if he gets 100-plus yards and sees the end zone 1 or 2 times. He's averaging 1.5 rushing touchdowns per game and 120 rushing yards per game as well. And if they need him through the air, he's a capable pass-catching running back, although he's not doing that much damage through the air this season, but he's been just fine on the ground. He's been very efficient. He's scoring a lot of touchdowns, and I think we're going to have another really big game from Dalvin Cook. So he's going to be the first guy I'm plugging in my lineups this weekend. And then getting into core play number 2, it's our first wide receiver we're going to talk about, but it's Keenan Allen at $7,400 going up against the New York Jets, who are ranked dead last, 32nd DVA versus the pass. And all I have to say for the Jets is good luck stopping Keenan Allen. I think Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen have a field day here, and they're also going to be without cornerback Brian Poole. And you take him out of the equation and it gets even worse. So I'm not really sure who's stopping Keenan Allen. I guess the only thing that could slow them down is that they're about 10-point favorites at home, so maybe they don't have to throw the ball too much in the second half if the game gets out of hand. But the thing is, the Chargers tend to get themselves in bad situations. So either way, I think Keenan Allen is a phenomenal play here. And I know he's a bit pricey, but with all the value we have on this slate, it's not that hard to fit in Dalvin Cook and Keenan Allen. And if you guys watched my lineup building video, which I would definitely recommend doing, I'll try to put that in the top right hand corner of the screen if you want to check that out. It's a nice video. I go over lineup building process to build cash games, but it's not that hard at all to fit in Keenan Allen and Dalvin Cook this week. So if you got the money for it, I would really recommend it. He's been a model of consistency all season long. He's really yet to have a bad game. I know last week it kind of took him a while to get into the end zone and kind of save his day because overall he wasn't doing that great, but the volume's safe each and every single week. He's averaging over 10 targets per game. He's got around a 30% target share, close to 80 yards per game. And you got to keep in mind, that's putting in that game where he was playing versus New Orleans and he got hurt early on, so it's going to skew his numbers down a little bit. So overall, we know Keenan Allen, he's having a fantastic season. He should have a really good game here, and he's got a good quarterback getting him the football, and Justin Herbert. They definitely have some good chemistry together so far. And like I mentioned earlier, the Jets are absolute trash versus the pass this season. Dead last, 32nd DVOA. They're 24th versus wide receivers, allowing close to 200 receiving yards per game. So Keenan Allen, if you got the money for him, I feel very confident in him this weekend. And then getting into core play number 3, it's our second wide receiver we're going to talk about and our second Minnesota Viking. But I just like all the Vikings here. They're facing the Cowboys, and I know Dalvin Cook's pretty expensive, but Adam Thielen's too cheap at $6,300, and Justin Jefferson's definitely too cheap at $6,000. So I'm definitely in on all the Vikings this week, and I almost cheated and put Adam Thielen in this slideshow as well, but I decided on Justin Jefferson just because it's a bit cheaper, and I feel like he's got a bit more big game upside. Adam Thielen's been very consistent this season. He's definitely had his fair share of good games, but Justin Jefferson is definitely capable of putting up 40-plus points here, and he's had quite a few boom games this season. I don't think he's as consistent as Adam Thielen. He also has a lower target number and lower target share, but week 6 versus Atlanta, 42 DraftKings points. Week 3 versus Tennessee, 33 fantasy points. Then last week in a tough matchup versus the Bears, he had around 25 fantasy points, and I would not be surprised if he has one of those big games this week versus Dallas, one of the worst secondaries in football. I believe they're 29th versus wide receivers. If I can double check that for you guys. Yeah, 20th versus wide receivers, allowing the 4th most points per game, over 45 DraftKings points per game, and close to 2 receiving touchdowns per game allowed to wide receivers. So both Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson should have some strong games here. I just really like the upside here with Justin Jefferson, and I think he's just a bit too cheap in a phenomenal matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys. He's got around a 23% target share in the season, close to 90 receiving yards per game. He has an 8 out of above 12, so I'm liking the upside here for Justin Jefferson, and I think he's an awesome play versus a pretty weak secondary in the Dallas Cowboys. All right, so our 4th core point is the 3rd wide receiver we're going to talk about. Sorry, there's not other running backs, but the running backs for this slate are pretty ugly outside of Dalvin Cook. But anyway, JAKOBI Meyers, $4,900. I'm starting to really like this game for fantasy purposes. This New England and Houston game definitely has some shootout potential. It's only a 49-point over-under, which I say only, that's not that bad. But yeah, most weeks we're targeting games with 55, 56, 54 point totals. So 49 is not super impressive, but there's definitely upside in this game because both these defenses are not that good. I know the Patriots just overall have a perception of them having a good defense, but this season it is pretty trash. Like, they're 31st DVA versus the run, and versus the pass, they're not that good either. So I can definitely see the Texans putting up some points, and the Texans defense isn't very good either. They're awful versus the pass, and they're awful versus the run. And JAKOBI Meyers in the recent month, he has established himself as the wide receiver 1. There's no more Julian Edelman, and he's been getting plenty of volume. And if we actually look at his game log, he's been pretty consistent, with 7, 14, 10, and 6 targets, and his fantasy points 10, 13, 31, and 15. It's a good spot here versus Houston. They've struggled through the air this season. And I know this is a run-first team for the most part, but Meyers has definitely been busy. And if we're looking at how Houston has fared versus wide receivers this season, they rank 22nd DVA versus the pass, 22nd versus wide receivers, and over a receiving touchdown per game. So JAKOBI Meyers, I know this is their run-first team, but he's obviously Cam Newton's #1 option. And I feel like he's a bit too cheap for the role he's had in this offense, and I really want pieces of this game. A lot of good pieces here. Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, Duke Johnson, JAKOBI Meyers, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller. So I definitely like stacking this game up. It's definitely good for tournaments, and I think there's plenty of good cash game options as well. Then the 5th core play we're going to talk about, it's an interesting one. It's definitely gained some steam since the news dropped yesterday, but it's Taysom Hill at $4,800. And it's going to be pretty hard to pass him up at this price point in a really soft matchup versus the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I know Sean Payton yesterday didn't officially name Taysom Hill as the quarterback, but I feel like he's just kind of playing mind games there, or some gamemanship, because he had the first team reps all week in practice, and I can't assume Adam Schefter would just tweet that he's going to be the starter out of nowhere just off of a hunch. I'm sure he has a reliable source telling him this information. Plus, they have financial incentive to start Taysom Hill because he is definitely getting paid more than Jameis Winston. So they're going to want to see what they get with Taysom Hill. And the thing I like the most about him, besides this matchup versus Atlanta, they're actually allowing the most points per game, 29.2 points and 322 passing yards per game. And they're also 28th DVA versus the pass. But he offers us some rushing upside as well. He's kind of a gadget player. He can throw the ball, he can run the ball, and he can catch the ball as well. Now, to be honest, I never really liked Taysom Hill because whenever I roster the guys like Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, and Drew Brees, he tends to steal their touches and steal the touchdowns. So I'm hoping, since I'm going to play him this week, that he is the one scoring touchdowns this week. Now, I'm not expecting him to come out, throw 300 plus yards, but if he can get us 200 some passing yards and get some damage on the ground and hopefully get a rushing touchdown and maybe throw a touchdown, that's definitely going to be good enough at $4,800, and there's definitely a good opportunity for that versus Atlanta. This should be a high-scoring game for the most part, and he's got good options to get the ball to in Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook, Michael Thomas, and some other guys as well. So only $4,800. I can't really see him busting in this spot, so I'm going to hop on the train this week. We'll see how it goes. Taysom Hill chalk is going to definitely be interesting, but I think I'm going to be a part of it for Week 11 of the NFL season. Alright, so I usually stop the core plays after either 4 or 5, but I do have 2 bonus guys here just because we need an RB2 this week. I know the running back position is not that good, but we're going to have to play one of them, and I kind of plan on spending up for Keenan Allen and Dalvin Cook, so I don't think I'm going to be able to afford an expensive RB2, so I'm going to be looking at this 5K range. But Duke Johnson and Kalen Ballage, I like both of these guys quite a bit because they're both in good matchups, and they're also dealing with some injuries where they're in more of a prominent role, and they're going to be the main running backs on their teams. Are these guys both great? Not at all, but it's mostly just about volume and the price point here. We're going to start with Duke Johnson. He's $5,400. I know this did not work out last week at all. I liked him a lot versus Cleveland, and he definitely busted as chalk. So I think he's a nice post-hype play here at $5,400 because people don't like going back to the guy that busted them last week. But I'm going to be back here. He played on 95% of the snaps. Like, you can't really ask for much more. 95% of the snaps is pretty good. He's going to be on the field the entire game. And New England really struggles versus the run. They're 31st DVOA versus that, and they're bottom half in the league versus running backs, and they're allowing 110 rushing yards per game. And I got to assume that he's going to be more involved in the passing game this week. He only had 1 target last week. But if you combine David Johnson's and Duke Johnson's target share numbers, this season is about a 20% combined target share. So I'm going to assume he's going to get a handful of targets here, more than one that he had last week. And as long as he gets 15 to 20 touches here at $5,400, I think he'll be fine. I'm going to have to hope he gets into the end zone. Even if he doesn't, I think we can see 10 plus points from him. And on a slate like this, it might not be the worst thing in the world. Then Kalen BALLAGE at $5,600. He's the guy that I've been rising on as the week goes on. And I'm really liking him quite a bit. And if you want to do a 3 running back lineup with Dalvin Cook, Duke Johnson, and Kalen BALLAGE, I don't think that's a bad idea either. But he played 75% of the snaps last week, and he should be in line for 15 to 20 touches here. And he's facing the Jets defense, which we know is one of the worst teams in football, and they're 9.5-point favorites at home. So that actually does set up well for Kalen BALLAGE. And the Jets are 26 versus running backs, allowing 27.2 DraftKings points per game. They've also struggled through the air, allowing 6.5 catches per game as well. And BALLAGE had 6 targets last week. He's going to be both through the air. So I think both of these guys are fine. They're very similar plays to me, and I'm actually having a hard time trying to pick one over the other. As of right now, since Duke Johnson's just a little bit cheaper and he did play 95% of the snaps, I guess I'll give him a slight edge there, but both these guys are kind of a coin flip play. Whatever one you end up with, I think is fine. If you need the extra $200 in savings with Duke, you go with Duke. If you don't, BALLAGE, it's kind of enticing as well. So hope this video was helpful, guys. If it was, make sure to leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. If you want to follow me over on Twitter, I'm at ChrisPennell16, CPenn16 over on IG. And if you want to support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below. For that, you can get access into my entire NFL DFS data sheet, which has pretty much every single thing you need on there: matchups, wide receiver versus cornerback matchups, projections, cheat sheet, notes, some other stuff on there as well. Offensive line versus defensive line stuff, pressure rates, whatever you want. It's probably on there. And then you can bug me in Discord all day if you want to do that as well. So I'm going to get out of here, guys. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I hope you guys